guys, so it is September, which means school is happening, at least for most people. For those of you like me, you don't have school, because I graduated 3 years ago from college because I'm old. So I'm not doing any sort of like back to school hauls or back to school like tutorials or like packing for school, because like it's irrelevant. But I learned a lot while I was in high school and in college, so I thought I would share a little bit of that advice and that knowledge with you, since there are a lot of you that are either in high school right now or in college, and those are tough times and they're crazy times, and there's a lot of shit that goes down in your life that you need to kind of work your way through. Yeah. Honestly, I didn't really want to make an entire video just giving like a list of advice and a list of things, because I did that last year and I didn't really feel like repeating myself. So I'll redirect you to that if you are really interested in having a more comprehensive list on my just tips for school in general and like college. But for today's video, I wanted to share with you the best piece of advice I could give any sort of creative person in going to school. Like if you're starting college, if you are early on in high school, even if you're a senior in high school. The best piece of advice I can give to anybody, and just anybody, is to join the student newspaper. And I know it's gonna come from a biased point of view, and you're gonna be like, Abby, don't even think about that. I don't like writing. I don't like... I joined my student newspaper when I was 15. I was a sophomore in high school, and all I really wanted to do was write stuff. My high school's newspaper was the Peninsula Outlook. We were pretty well known in the student journalist circles. We kind of were not famous, but like infamous for reasons and shit. We had a reputation, okay? We had a bit of a reputation. When I joined, I was kind of naive about like what it took to run a student newspaper and like all the pieces that it took. And what I learned throughout the rest of high school, because I stayed on till I graduated, and then I joined my college paper when I was a sophomore in college, because where I went freshman year didn't have a newspaper, but that's a whole nother story. There's so many pieces to a newspaper that most people don't see from an outsider's perspective. Because the newspaper industry, like city-wide newspapers like Seattle, New York, Chicago, like all these, like Chicago Sun-Times and Seattle Post-Intelligencer and like New York Times and like LA Times, all these big fucking fancy newspapers, it's so commercialized these days that it's really hard to kind of stay optimistic about the news. So the best place to learn about the news and the best place to learn about the way it started is actually in high school. It's in high school when you are still really optimistic about shit. You're not jaded about anything yet. Jumping into that world and jumping into that realm is such a valuable experience, because I learned more on my newspaper from my peers, from my colleagues, from my advisor, than I did in any class about like the media, which is weird. It sounds counterproductive, but it's kind of a learning on the job experience while you're really, really young, and you get to learn about so much shit. Not only do you learn how to write effectively and concisely and just clearly, you learn how to edit way better than in any like English class, because you're in like a real situation with deadlines. And then if you're not into writing, you learn so much about photography. I wish I would have been taking pictures when I was on my high school newspaper, because I would have learned so much more so much earlier. So if you're at all interested in photography, for the love of God, join the newspaper, because you will learn so much and it's so much fun, okay? Photojournalism is like one of the most intense, high energy, fun experiences, because you're just immersed in something and you are there to capture it, and it's your job to do that. And if you're somebody who is really more interested in like the business and the advertising aspect of it, please join the newspaper, because there are not that many of you that actually think about it, because that is like a piece that you don't see from the outside, and it's a piece that no creatives actually want to do. When I joined the newspaper, nobody wanted to do ad sales, nobody wanted to go out and like make money for the newspaper. Everybody just wanted to sit on the computer and write about shit. And for anybody who's ever been interested in graphic design, go join the newspaper, because you're in a real world type of job where they need you. You get to learn so much so fast all the time. It just hones your skills that much faster. so you have more experience once you get out into the real world, especially if you're doing it in college, because then you have like, you're older and like it's more credibility and shit. Employers look at achievements from college way more seriously than they do at the achievements from high school. So honestly, if you have real world experience, like real job type experience in college, it's way more helpful and way more effective than if like you played soccer as a senior in high school, because honestly they don't care at that point unless you're like going into sports or whatever. And the biggest lessons I learned when I was on the newspaper was about just politics and ethics in general, just about decision making and about decisions affecting other people. I learned a lot about the Constitution. I learned a lot about real world applications of like the First Amendment, which is the most important amendment, right? Like freedom of speech, freedom of the press, you know, it's important and shit. Like when I was a junior in high school, we had a bit of a snafu with our principal when we wrote a special edition about like embarrassing moments, and we had a picture of a tampon, and our principal was like, whoa, that's not cool, and she freaked out. And then like we were on prior review for a while, and then like the principal quit because she was a heinous bitch. We learned a lot about our own rights and what we had the right to say and what we had the right to print, and students' rights. And that was like my favorite part of it, is that we actually got involved in like legislation when we were on the newspaper. Like we went to like House hearings in Washington and like spoke on behalf of like a House bill. That was like my favorite part, is that we were actually getting involved in like the things around us, in like the communities around us, and making people know who we are. And like that's kind of cool. So if not for all the like artistic experience you can get working on a newspaper, do it just to learn about the world and to learn about the way that your local government works and the way that your student government, you just learn so much about just like so many things besides like comma splices. Best piece of advice I can give anybody: join your fucking student newspaper. Especially if you're like an introvert and like don't like getting involved in activities, because when you're on the student newspaper, you can't really get involved in a lot of activities because you have to stay like outside of it, you know, because you're like, you have to observe and like not have a conflict of interest. And it forces you to kind of step out of your comfort zone, which is always good because everybody needs to step out of their comfort zone once in a while, okay? So there you go. My best back to school advice for any person. So leave me questions for an upcoming Q&A in the comments below, because I want to do one. I haven't done one in a few months. And I have had a bit of a writer's block lately in terms of video making. That's what Thursday was. That's what my brain does at 3 a.m. when I have nothing to talk about. So leave me questions for an upcoming Q&A, and then any sort of requests for like any videos. Not a room tour, because I'm not doing it yet. And you don't need to make requests for makeup tutorials because I do those regularly anyway. Feedback! Feedback is the best thing. Speaking of feedback, if you hadn't noticed, I switched my glasses halfway through this video. I'm sneaky. This pair is Baxter, and then the first pair is Watts. Part of me is leaning on getting both pairs, but let me know what your favorites are. I'm definitely getting at least one of these. It took me 3 sets of 5 to finally find good glasses for me to wear on a regular basis. And for today's song of the day, it is Mama by St. Paul de Vence. My very good friend Benjamin Dorr, his band St. Paul de Vence just released their first single from their next album that's gonna be released next month, and I'm super excited for him. And it's a really beautiful song. And my friend Michael from The Weather produced it and everything, so it's like friends getting together making music. It's the best thing. Listen to that song because it's gorgeous, and leave me requests for videos and leave me questions for an upcoming Q&A because I'm gonna do one. So see you guys on Monday. Bye!